While bombs continued to rain down on the British, the Blitz was not the only cause for concern for Churchill, as the Battle of the Atlantic, which had begun when Britain declared war on Germany, was taking its toll on Allied merchant shipping. Britain was an island nation with an overseas empire, and its survival and ability to fight depended greatly on supplies from across the Atlantic Ocean. And as more boats were lost at sea, goods arriving in the country were rapidly depleting. Items that had always been taken for granted suddenly began to disappear from the shelves, and as early as January 1940, food rationing had been introduced, so everyone could claim their fair share of what was available. Bacon, butter and sugar were the first to be limited, but it wasn't long before many other things, such as tea and meat, were added to the list, and soon it was commonplace to see people queuing up outside of the shops, brandishing their ration books. Food wasn't the only thing to be rationed, however, and with limited amounts of fuel, petrol had been the first item introduced for rationing back in 1939. Although fuel production continued in Britain throughout the war, much of it was reserved for the Army's trucks and tanks, as well as the planes of the RAF. Bombers travelled long distances to Axis territory and needed a huge amount of fuel. With petrol in short supply, people were encouraged to use public transport rather than their own cars, and seeing horse-drawn vehicles rattling through the streets became a familiar sight again. Some, however, preferred using a more inspired method of getting about, and gas bags were occasionally used to supply cars with fuel. The fall of France in June 1940 had exacerbated the problem of getting supplies to the British Isles. With France beneath Nazi occupation, the German U-boats had direct access to the Atlantic from the western French ports of Brest and La Rochelle. This placed them a great deal closer to the convoy routes than normal, and effectively doubled their range and patrol times. Worse still, France had the fourth largest navy in the world, and with Pétain now collaborating with the Axis, the Allies no longer had this valuable navy force at their disposal.